beat you down, break your heart, and steal your crown. So start it out, God knows where. I guess I'll know when I get there. I'm learning to fly around the clouds. What goes up must come down. Hey! I'm learning to fly, but I ain't got no wings. And coming down is the hardest thing. I'm learning to fly around the clouds. But what goes up must come down. I'm learning to fly. I'm learning to fly. Yeah, I'm learning to fly. Learning to fly. I'm learning to fly. Learning to fly.
She's a good girl, loves her mama, loves Jesus and America too. She's a good girl, is crazy about Elvis, loves horses and a boyfriend too. It's a long day living in Reseda. There's a freeway running through the yard, and I'm a bad boy, so don't even miss her. I'm a bad boy for breaking her heart. Now I'm free. Free falling. Yeah, I'm free. Free falling. Now all the vampires walking through the valley move west down Ventura Boulevard, and all the bad boys are standing in the shadow, and the good girls are home with broken hearts. Now I'm free. I'm free falling. Yeah, I'm free. Free falling. Free nothing. I'm gonna leave this world for a while. Now I'm free falling, free falling, free falling, falling, free falling. Yeah, I'm free falling, free falling, free falling, falling, free falling. Free falling, I'm free falling. Now I'm free, free falling. Yeah, I'm free falling, I'm free falling, free falling. Now I'm free falling, I'm free falling, free falling. Yeah, I'm free falling, I'm free falling, free falling.
Hello, everybody. Hope this Sunday afternoon is finding. Oh, that should call Boomer Almond. And struggles. Alright. Well, the stream is off to a great start. Welcome again this Sunday afternoon. Hope we are all doing well in this quarantine. I can't believe we've made it. Double digits. This is the 10th episode. Also a multiple of 5, which means it's another time for another live stream. My name is Daniel. I am a solo host of this podcast. For those of you that don't know what the heck this is, it's a show where I bring on mainly wrestlers, and we talk about the psychology of wrestling and kind of what entails outside of the physical part of wrestling. And yeah, it's really, really interesting how someone like me that's never wrestled is attempting to capture, I think, something that normally really isn't captured, which is what happens off the mat. Plus, I just really needed a quarantine project to keep me busy, and boy, does this keep me busy. I promise you, this is sweet tea dressed in a wine glass to relieve my stress. As you guys can probably tell, I'm not the best with technology, so professional streamers can set this crap up in 10 minutes. For me, for my slow brain, it takes a little bit longer. Enough talk. We'll go ahead and get started. So this is a recap of episodes 6 through 9 with Grant Leith, Devin Schroeder, Taylor Vance, and Noah Gonser. This was a interesting group of episodes, and having me, as I fall out of cam, to get some more stress relief. Having never done or interviewed or really been into broadcasting except for the past year, naturally some of these interviews, especially at the beginning, I was very, very nervous about, and really what I figured was, one of my, I guess, questions going into this was, being somebody that never wrestled, never intends to wrestle, at least competitively, how much of a knowledge gap I might have, and it's definitely there, but it's not as big as I let's say, initially maybe thought. And certainly, I think the interviews are getting better as we go along. So, we'll see how it is. Let's say 5 or 10 more episodes here from now, but, yeah. Alright, well, let's get into it. So this was the 6th episode, and for those of you who don't know what happened with this episode, it's all over my Instagram and all over my social media. I am a boomer trapped in a teenager's body, and, you know, I wish I had that meme where it's like, in this moment, that's when, it was in this moment that he knew that he fucked up. You know, when you, the funny thing is this interview, not to, you know, bash any of my other interviews, but I pride myself on trying to keep these interviews concise and short. I think it's important. I, you know, try to keep them within 30 minutes, within 40 minutes tops. This one went on for an hour because me and Grant talked about everything, and I just lost track of time. Also forgot to hit the record button, except for the first minute of the interview, which is this clip, which I'll show here in a minute. And it's really, really, really interesting, especially when I show you the clip, and I know this interview kind of like by the back of my hand, even though I don't have the recording of it. Like, sometimes I'll go back, because it has been, this was recorded maybe 3 weeks ago, especially my 6th and 7th episode 3 weeks ago. So it wasn't until today, when I was putting clips together for this, that I was like, oh yeah, he said that, you know. But this one I kind of remember by the back of my hand. And also, side note, just wanted to touch on this, I think my luck with Mizzou wrestlers are cursed. I haven't had that many technical issues with other of my episodes, but this time, see, I had Grant on. I was trying to set Grant up, and I did, and we did an interview. It took 3 times. First time, his Wi-Fi gave out. Second time, pretty sure my Wi-Fi went out. We were like in the middle of, my family was on vacation. I kicked the whole family out of the house and was like, out of the vacation house, and was like, hold on a second. I kicked them all out of the house and was like, I've got an interview to do. And then third obviously we did the interview, and somebody outsmarted themselves and forgot to hit record, but, you know, it is what it is. And then I was trying to set up Brock Mahler, and he was like literally, we were like literally about to call each other, and he goes, and then I have trouble with my computer, and he goes, yeah, also, like, I'm moving tomorrow, so, like, we're about to move, or, like, I'm somewhere else, and, you know, we'll set it up later. And I was like, alright. And so, you know, maybe, I don't know, there's just some curse with me and Mizzou wrestlers. Anyway, enough rambling. This is all that's left of my interview with Grant. But this, I think it's still a decent clip. Also, let's see here. There we go. It's still a decent clip. And I'll have more to say on the other side.
Well, so you don't know quite yet. So I guess, does that mean there's going to be like a massive reshuffling? You probably don't have to reveal too much, but...
The only differences will be 49, 57, 65. Because it's me, Brock, Jarrett, and Mongo. And Jarrett and Brock both have red shirts that they could use. And then the rest of it would just be kind of seeing what happens from there. So we got a lot of options on the plus side.
Good problem to have, no?
Yeah,
Alright,
definitely.
fair enough. Well, I guess we'll get into the deeper stuff. Now, you have been through.
All right. First of all, can we just talk about how, if you look at all the rankings, I think the Flow rankings and all the other, what's the other website, Track, have this guy listed as, like, in the teens. First of all, it should be a single-digit number, period. It doesn't make sense. This guy's only wrestled one NCAA championship, and he was the 3 seed. Like, hello? But I think he relishes being overlooked, and certainly right now at the beginning of the season. I think he is being. That is going to change, obviously. Also, during that clip, he, like, rambled off half of the starters. And, like, obviously I knew who those people were, because I did my research, but obviously my mind being slow, I really wasn't prepared for that, and you could tell in my voice I was like, trying to follow along when I really didn't know what he was really saying at the moment. But obviously, you know, Mizzou's got a really, really good team coming into next season, and we will see where they can take all their pieces and run with them. They have a really, really strong team, and I think Mizzou, like, if you look at teams like Mizzou, Princeton, and Cornell, I think those are the 3 that come to mind where they're really, really good teams, but they're not on the Big Ten, they're not in the Big 12, they're not in the ACC, and they often get overlooked because they don't really appear, you don't really see them. You see them at the Cliff Keen, you see them at the Southern Scuffle, you see them at some little opens here and there, but when they go into conference play, which is probably plausibly what we may only have this year, with the Big Ten already coming out with the decision for football that it's only going to be conference play, I would not be shocked I would not be shocked to see the least if it's only conference play, which I think kind of it helps and hurts these teams in a way, because psychologically, yes, it helps them. It hurts them in that, like, they probably don't get to wrestle somebody good. This is probably what's going to make seeding nearly impossible for these wrestlers if we go to a conference-only schedule. Like, if you look at somebody, especially Missouri in the MAC, like, they've won the conference championship, like, 8 of the past 9 years, 9 of the past 10 years, whatever it is. Like, some of these guys may not wrestle a single ranked opponent for the whole year. Of course, this is presuming that all the massive opens get canceled, like Cliff Keen and Southern Scuffle and whatnot. It definitely hurts them. It makes seeding impossible, and you don't know where to put them, but it helps them in that psychologically you don't see the top guys before the NCAA is really, which will be an interesting dynamic. But that's just my 2 cents on what this new season is going to look like, and I'll have clips later from other people that we'll see what this new season kind of looks like and what changes and what differences it will have, and who ultimately winds up benefiting the most from them. Other things, first of all, Grant's got like the most perfect hair of any guest I've ever had. Just wanted to point that out. Also, since I don't have any other video clips from this episode because of my stupidity, Grant talked about in this episode, and I'm going to try to not twist his words. See, I wish I would have had, like, there's those transcript things that those TV anchors go off of, and read through the prompter, and just, perfectly easy, but, that's not how these things go. Like, the reason why, and I told Grant this after the episode, I'm like, this is, before I had realized that I butchered the recording, that his story is remarkable. Like, it is remarkable in that, you'll see here in a minute, his coach says, you look at the picture of his car after, his car gets totaled, and you're like, that guy, whoever was in that car, that didn't end well. It's not supposed to end well. You look at that car and go, ooh. And, the fact that he still is wrestling, the fact that he's, even still alive, is the way Coach Smith put it, was like, it's incredible. And, given everything that's going on, not even just in the wrestling community, but in the world, I mean, just, it's hard to keep in perspective that there are crises that are happening as our lives speak. Like, just because we have coronavirus, just because we have police brutality, doesn't mean the opioid crisis is not, still rampant. And if you know Grant's story, which for those of you who don't, I will share it here in a minute. I have, probably one of the best news articles written, but his story has the making of, like, has all the ingredients for the prototypical depression story. Like, he's been through, like, shoulder surgery, like, pretty significant shoulder surgery, and knee surgery, and a whole bunch of this other stuff, and, you're obviously given, painkillers and stuff. And, for somebody, and this is what is difficult, right, is what makes this story most remarkable, and is, Grant even said it himself in the interview, it was like, I was a decent name at wrestling, and out of high school he was on the big boards and whatnot, and to have it stripped away from you to the point where, you can't walk, your shoulder can't move, that is almost harder than for somebody like me that's like, if I, bust a shoulder, or like, I just, I'm not very athletic anyway, so it's not like I'm just waiting for this shoulder to heal. I'll stay home and play chess all day and practice debate. That doesn't require a shoulder, so we'll just wait for the shoulder to heal, then we'll go back out, and eventually my shoulder will be able to walk. It's the same concept as if the smartest kid in class got a concussion and knocked out, and now becomes the dumbest kid in class and has to relearn everything that they learned in the past, especially something that they were naturally good at before the injury. That is what is psychologically most difficult, is that Grant, if you don't believe it by that picture, he's like, every wrestler is athletically gifted, either that be natural talent or, produced talent, or should I say, learned talent. They are naturally good at it, and when it is taken away from you, it is psychologically so difficult to recover. And give me 1 second here to work this. Alright. Like, I mean, literally, disc replacement surgery, and then he like wrestled, and then he like blew out his knee, and then he had to go through that, and then he T-boned and fell asleep on the highway and got in the car wreck. Yeah, and you can see his coach was like, if you see the car, you would think that whoever was in it would be killed. And then his shoulder popped out again. And it's just like, you can't, like, I'm about to have surgery, and, you know, in a week or so, tiny surgery that will just fix something in my leg, and I'm scared about that, you know. And to go through surgery, at least 4 or 5 times, and to still be like, I still want to do this, and I still want to be really, really good at it, is something that not very many people can do. And it really is unbelievable how he's able to do it. And you can see somebody that loves to talk, somebody that's loud, and you know my personality during the podcast. For those of you who watch many episodes, I'm rather boisterous, and it's very difficult to describe what he has been through, and you know, and to still want to continue is unbelievable. Plus his Twitter feed. Oh man, let's talk about that for a second. His Twitter feed is, let's say, interesting. And it's just, we have to learn to accept other people's opinions in this day and age. Like, we've got to do it. And for those of you who don't know, you can look at his Twitter page, look at his most recent tweets, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, we don't know everybody's, I don't want to say personal struggles, but experiences. Like, we all take in information each and every day based on the people that we're exposed to, the experiences that we have, and that formulates our mind. And the thing is, before we judge somebody, we have to know the formulation, the ingredients, the experiences, before we can even begin to attempt to judge the result. And that's what we're not doing, not only within the wrestling community and within the world at large. And that's, you know, if you take into account anything, like the Pat Downey situation, the whole Twitter drama, you know, that's how he feels. Like, that's how Pat Downey feels. What he tweeted, that's how Pat Downey feels. But instead of saying, well, that really divided, right, the wrestling community, you had some people that say, well, he's, you know, sexist and, you know, whatnot. And then you had the other half of the wrestling community that's like, it's just an opinion, who cares? And then you have some people that agree. That's like, you know, statistically, more men, we watch men's wrestling more. And for somebody who was never, you know, engaged in wrestling as a child and was not exposed, the first exposure was on TV like 4 or 5 years ago. You know, obviously we just saw a whole bunch of guys wrestling at the NCAAs. So instead of trying to judge somebody at a judge just the result, we've got to be able to judge not only the process first and begin to understand the process and what pieces formulate their opinion. And that's what I've always tried to do with the show, and hopefully I'm doing at least a decent job at it. Anyway, enough rambling. I'm still trying to maybe one day redo this interview properly, this time with recording. But anyway, that's enough talk on one episode. We still have 3 more episodes to get to, and at this rate we are going to be here until Monday morning. So we're not going to let that happen, and we are going to move to our next episode, which give me a second to transition my webcam, and we'll see you on the other side. And I am back. So this is now the 7th episode with Devin Schroeder. What was interesting is I had originally planned to do Grant the same day, then Devin like an hour after. Devin had something pop up like right then and there, which was perfect, so this got moved over to the next day, and especially after I had found out that I didn't record my episode with Grant, I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, at least we're in a better mood here for this episode than I was 24 hours ago, because I really was pissed at myself, really, about what happened. But we have another clip here, and I'll have more to say on the other side. Like finding your identity away from wrestling kind of before this happened, does that kind of help you come to that realization faster?
Yeah, for sure. Again, like wrestling's such a big part of my life and everyone around me, but it doesn't define who I am. And I think that's one thing I've learned growing up is as a kid, you're just wrestling, you want to win all the time, but as you learn to take losses, you learn like wrestling doesn't define you. You have like your faith, your family, your friends, your relationships, and that's what stables you at the end of the day. You lose your NCAA championships, and a lot of people lost their seasons, but you don't lose who you are, and everything that we've accomplished, we don't lose that either. We still had a great season, and I'm lucky enough to have another one, so it's not the end of the world. I still have my family, my friends, and all the people that care to me. It's just one tournament. It sucks to lose it, but I still thankfully have another year, and I'm excited to keep working towards that goal.
Okay, this clip, I put it in here. It's just a good reminder, though, that given everything and the wrestling world has kind of come to a standstill, we'll see if we're ever able to pull off a competition with 200-300 people with fans. We shall see. Especially the NCAA's next year. Are we going to be able to have? As I constantly try to adjust my webcam. Are we going to be able to have 20,000-30,000 fans? We'll see. But it is a good reminder that life does have to move on, and for people that are currently in activities that have completely come to a standstill, that is something that is important to keep in mind. And with challenges comes a opportunity to innovate. So we shall see how this Flow Wrestling card turns out to be, and how they are able to pull something like this off. I think it's a very, very good point by Devin that wrestling is kind of in this strange spot, and all the other spring sports that had their championships canceled in the spring. Interesting, because wrestling even had their conference championships. They had the selection show, and then everything got swept down away from under them. So just keep in mind that life does move on, and we're hoping to get past this quarantine as soon as we can. And by the way, just one little side note, for those of you that wonder why I'm always, making facial expressions and touching my face, it's like any chess player will tell you that this is like a horrible habit of ours that we have, that we're always, we pretend that doing this makes us think harder, and we pretend that this, helps our concentration. And if you watch any of my episodes, you'll know that this does not make for a good freeze frame thumbnail picture, but it is what it is. We have more important things to be worried about than ugly thumbnails. Alright, moving on, keeping the show rolling without chugging this whole gallon of sweet tea that's next to me. Next episode is with Taylor Benz. We'll keep the same drill, clip, see you on the other side, transition the webcam, do all that streamer stuff that I'm terrible at. Yeah. Top-notch quality production right here. Jesus Christ.
My 8th grade year, I was a starter. I was pretty tunnel vision. 7th grade in Minnesota, you can wrestle varsity. So I was a part-time starter. And then my 8th grade year, I was a starter, made to state. And by the time I was a freshman, I was just thinking, I wasn't really thinking about my total career goals. I was just thinking about that year. And as the preseason came around, I realized it was going to be, me and Mitchell McKee were the best two guys. And I'd wrestled them at Pinnacle. So I had to ask myself, hey, what weight class are you going to be at the end of the year? What's your realistic goal? I think I started off before the season started saying top 3, and that didn't sit right. And now that I tell that story, I remember that was probably the moment where I was it's when I realized, it just doesn't sit right with me to set a goal for top 3, because I know it's technically possible for me to beat this guy, because he kicked my butt in practice, but I could get, if I could get one score every practice, then technically it was possible for me to outscore him one match. And so I felt that, and I was like, I'm going to go with that. I'm going to ride with that logic and intuition, and that carried me all the way there and got the job done. So.
And is that something that you have tried to apply throughout the rest of your career? Just kind of taking a narrative that a positive belief narrative, and just pushing and running with it, and not trying to think too much to go along with it.
Absolutely. And I think that's where, when you're younger, life's a little bit simpler and you've had a little less experiences. And I was fortunate enough to have had great experiences as far as wrestling and just being supported and doing the sport that I love. And, all of my struggles in life essentially came from wrestling. And I recognized that, and that was okay. That's pretty rare though, and I'm pretty lucky. And I was pretty tunnel vision. 7th grade in Minnesota, you can wrestle varsity. So I was a part-time starter.
All right. I think Taylor brings up a very, very good point here at large, is that as we tend to mature and as we tend to get older, we begin to maybe overcomplicate the way we think, and we say, now that I'm older, that we must think about it in a quote-unquote more mature way. But actually, some of our more simplistic ways of thinking when we were younger and tunnel vision and just saying, I'm going to do this, may actually help in the ability to achieve something. And that ultimately is a very interesting point, because as we continue to mature, we always begin to overcomplicate certain things that may be simple, because that's what society tells us to do. Society tells us to change. As we get older, we should be more sophisticated. And I think the larger point here is there are simple ways in tunnel mode and vision thinking that can still be applied to certain elements of us growing up. That did not make any sense at all. Let's try that again. There are still elements in kind of this more simplistic, unsophisticated way of thinking that can still be applied no matter what age you are. And I think sometimes we overlook that because we think that everything is so much more complicated as we grow up, when it really isn't, right? When you're in middle school, and I know for myself, it was like, yeah, we're going to try to win this middle school chess championship. And that's all I cared about. Like, there's nothing else. And now, all of a sudden, you're, college student, and it's, there's a million things going around you a mile a minute, but sometimes it is good just to say, all I care about this weekend is doing this one thing. This unsophisticated way of thinking without complicating it with all the other things that are happening. And I think that's an interesting approach that is probably different than that we don't think about as much as we get older. Alright, one more here. These episodes often do go and become a rant by me, which is probably why they're not all that interesting, to be honest. My humor is way too dry for this kind of stuff. My humor is pretty dry in general, but oh well. One last non-smooth scene switch, and we'll see you on the other side. Alright, so this is my 9th episode with Noah Gonser, and this was super interesting in that literally, I try to do my research really before I reach out to somebody, because some people, they just don't have anything. Not that their stories aren't interesting, but sometimes you look on the internet and there's just nothing about them, and those are that's a daring proposition. I feel like I'm being dared every time I see that. I get dared. I'm, dared to bring them on and see if I can, get them to tell their story. But what was interesting is I had done all my research. I was like, alright, we're ready to go. And 30 minutes before Noah was about to come on, I Googled his name one last time, and it was like, yeah, Noah just got hired, like yesterday, to join the Campbell admin team. And I was like, oh, well, okay. So that was, something interesting that almost went over my head when we did the interview. But I think he has a very, very good point here, and I chose this clip very deliberately, and I'll play it, and we'll see you on the other side.
yeah, we had no clue. We had no clue. I guess looking back now, yeah, we had no clue. We had no clue how drastic this was going to be. Uh, we're still going to see the effects, and people still don't know how to handle it, even today. So next season is going to be something to look forward to here, especially right now because the NCAA hasn't issued any real standardized procedures. So every university is handling it a different way. Um, but it's going to be interesting, and I'm not sure how the season's going to work next year. But um, so from a mindset wise, as an athlete going forward here, if I were competing next season, it would be, be ready to roll with punches because you might not have the same college experience as everybody else has had so far. But yeah, going back to your original question there. Right now, going back, I would say, I was kind of doing the right things. I think, it's just living that right lifestyle. That's about it. So I guess looking back now.
Alright, first of all, at the end, you can see how much it still hurts for all the seniors, as it should. I don't think the NCAA handled that whole situation very well at all. And it is very, very clear that the NCAA, this whole situation has caught the NCAA completely off guard, and we shall see what kind of procedures that are being put in place. And I think they need to put out a procedure now, very, very soon, and keep in mind and treat all athletes of all sports exactly the same. Because I feel like the NCAA, they obviously, let's just be real here, because we keep it real here on this show. Wrestling is not at the forefront of the NCAA's focus, because wrestling, to be perfectly honest, does not make the NCAA money. Let's just compare to other sports that run concurrently with wrestling. It does not make the NCAA money. But that does not mean that these people are not putting in time and effort and deserve to be treated the same way as, let's say, a football player. And the NCAA needs to come out with some kind of standardized procedures that universities can follow, because the hierarchy at the NCAA is a complete mess, with all the different conferences coming out with different, rules and sets and everything. There needs to be more standardized leadership coming from the top. And if nobody has heard Paul Feinbaum's epic rant asking for, I think Mark Emmert's his name, I probably completely butchered that, but that's beside the point, to resign, I highly suggest you check it out. And he was basically spot on. You cannot let these athletes go in limbo, especially since you've already screwed over an entire senior class and just basically said, well, there's nothing we can really do about it. Which in all fair honesty, to give the NCAA credit, they probably, couldn't have done much more than they did. Rescheduling it would be a complete nightmare. But it is what it is. But from this point forward, there needs to be some kind of standardized procedure for all universities to follow. They're the only institution that has the power to do so, and allowing these conferences and schools to make their independent decision without some sort of overarching guidance is what's inherently going to make this new season a mess if the NCAA doesn't get their act together. On a side note, which I have lots of, we talk about how infectious just Noah's smile is. There are certain people, when you interview them, it's they're just so, lively, and it's just like, this was a super fun interview, and I highly suggest for those of you who haven't seen the interview in its entirety to go check it out. This stream has been a lot of fun, a lot of me rambling, a lot of me probably, giving some form of hot takes. I have a huge week planned this week. This was kind of the first part of it, also probably the least exciting part of it. I have an interview with Vito Arujau coming out tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. I have an interview coming out with Alex Thompson from Nebraska coming out on Wednesday. And on Thursday, I have more debate spreading and debate hot takes with the Flow Wrestling card. And, if you enjoy people speaking at over 150 words per minute, and some wrestling mixed in with that, tune in. Follow The Mental Takedown on Instagram and on Twitter, and be sure to subscribe and do all that influencer stuff, because you can tell how terrible I am at working and functioning technology. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day whenever you are watching this, and just remember, stay safe. Everybody do what they need to do, and